Hi everyone, and this is going to be our last discussion for our professional elective class. So this is going to be the last portion of your manuscript, which involves the financial aspect. So for this lecture video, I'm going to give you a tour. I'm going to give you a workshop or a tutorial on how to create financial projections. So since we are very much running out of time at the moment, instead of a 5 year projection, we're going to do a 3 year projection or three year financial projection instead. So to start our lecture, let me just show you the glimpse of um, the requirements, at least in my class. These are the components of the financial aspect of your manuscript. So the first thing that you have to do is to create financial assumptions. So basically, this will be the guide that your readers will be referring to when it comes to the basis of your projection. Okay, so regardless if it's a creditor, regardless if it's a potential business partner or an investor. So this is the first page of your financial aspect that's going to matter. Okay. Next is that you have to show your required initial capital or startup funds. Okay, next would be you have to identify your sources of financing or funding. And then you have to show the computation of the salaries and wages, which should reflect, okay, which should reflect the management aspect of your paper. Okay, so kung you have 5 employees consisting of probably two cashiers, two waiters, and then one supervisor. So, kailangan mag-reflect yan dun sa computation ng salaries and wages. Next, we have the operating expenses. Okay. I will be giving you a template later so that we can discuss each items one by one. And then one of the most crucial parts of your presentation would be the sales projection. Okay, so this is going to be the basis of your revenue or sales, which will be reflected on your income statement. And then the next would be your projected cash flow statement. And the last would be the projected balance sheet. Okay. After that, you have to compute for basic financial ratios, not everything, just basic financial ratios that are very um, relevant for decision making. And then you have to prepare a break-even analysis. And the last would be the net present value computation and the payback period. So later on, we would be discussing all of these components one by one using an Excel sheet or an Excel template. Now, let's first discuss what financial assumptions are all about. So, basically, this is going to be the first page of your financial aspect. It's usually a one page, um, it's description. It's not a literature. So it's going to be a one page description of the following. So uh, you can start your financial assumptions with the business level assumptions like how many days would the business operate? Uh, are you a cyclical business or are you um, probably do you operate at just at least evening or do you operate during the morning or are you going to be a 24-hour business? So it has to be described in your financial assumption as well. Uh, but this one it's more on the bird's eye view assumption. So how many months could you reach a particular goal? So again, these are just examples. You don't have to answer everything. You just have to select a few of this to be your guide. So, hindi naman kailangan lahat ito ay i-include ninyo dun sa inyong assumption. So, mamili na lang din kayo if you want to include the business level assumptions or not. Aside from this one, ito ang pinaka-importante, yung revenue or sales assumption. Okay? Kasi ito, it's going to be the basis of your projection when it comes to sales. So, you have to make sure there is a conservative estimate. Okay. Later, if as we progress with the discussion of the sales projection, I will be discussing to you the importance of making sure that we assume we assume based on our demand analysis, which will be discussed later in this video. And then the business will grow by at least, numbers of customers each month. So napaka-importante nito, tina-target na to, which will be reflected on your marketing aspect. So it's going to be a connect the dot uh, result for, kumbaga, yung mga naunang mga aspects na ginawa ninyo would all reflect on your financial aspect. Okay? Next, we have the assets assumptions. This one is when it comes to your fixed assets. In this case, the assumption is just looking for the amount or the value that is allotted for your fixed assets. Okay? Next is funding or financing assumptions. Okay. Uh, i-compute nyo muna po ito. I-compute muna. So, before you end up with the answer here, you have to first compute your initial startup costs. And then you have to answer kung saan manggagaling itong funding ninyo. Usually in my class, I require my students to research on the different interest rates which is granted by by commercial banks to small enterprises here in Tarlac. But since we are in a pandemic, we have limited mobility, so I'm afraid you cannot do the interview in local banks here in Tarlac. So we will just be assuming that it's gonna be purely personal funds. But I usually restrict my students from simply doing personal funds lang. Kumbaga, kailangan meron talagang commercial loan na kasama kasi importante marunong kayong mag-amortize ng loan. So this time it's an exemption because it's the pandemic. So we will assume everything would come from personal funds. Okay? So by the way, dun sa funding natin, pwede kayong mag-include ng outsider investor if you want. Hindi lang siya limited sa inyong group. So, like for example, individually, you can get at least 500,000 or 1 million personal fund. Okay, and then you could also assume outsider investor. You could write names of your friends or relatives who are most likely interested to invest in your business. Okay, so it's just for the sake of discussion. Next, we have operating expenses. Of course, again, this will be computed first before you do the assumptions. But importante kasi yung operating expense in a way that, remember, in economics, if you increase your sales projection, your operating expenses will also increase. So, yung margin dito is usually nagbe-base on your sales projection. Again, in terms of expenses, we have fixed expenses and variable expenses. Okay? So take note of that. And then we have personal expense assumptions. Okay? Yung salaries naman ang pinag-uusapan dito. If you have fixed employees, remember again, if you are trying to increase your sales every year, yung projections every year, you have to make sure na nagma-match yung capacity ng organization ninyo doon sa tina-target ninyong increase in revenue or sales. Okay? Next is your direct costs or your cost of sales, your overhead costs, usually dito sa cost of sales, nag-a-allot na lang yung iba ng certain percentage. So, like for example, the total sales will be based on the total sales, like for example, 70% would be assumed to be cost of sales. So parang ganun. But for some papers, they are really very much in detail when it comes to computing for their cost of sale. Okay? Mamaya makikita natin kung ano ba ang breakdown ng cost of materials. Okay, next. We have accounts receivable assumptions. I think not all of you will have accounts receivable assumptions kasi some of you would prefer cash basis instead of credit basis. So if you are on a cash basis, there's no need to place an accounts receivable assumption. Okay. But if expensive, highly expensive yung product, you would have to consider doing credit basis of selling your product because realistically speaking, mas maraming kumakagat sa pautang. Although of course there is a risk associated with that, but you also have to be realistic with your business. Pero if it dictates, like for example, if it's a uh service related business, for sure it's a cash basis. Then of course, taxes assumption. You have to research on that. Ilang percent ba ang pinapataw sa non-VAT or vatable na firm or business. And then the accounts payable assumptions, ito naman utang from your supplier. So, I think the best way to boost your initial sales is to not rely on cash basis pagdating sa inventory mo or supplies, again, realistically speaking, if you're going to open a business, of course, hindi ka magka-cash basis. But again, it's up to you if you want your inventory to be on cash basis. But if based dun sa interview ninyo, dun sa mga kakilala nyo na current owner, if they are doing it on a credit basis, you may use that as a reference on your manuscript or on your paper. So, pwede nyong i-adapt yon. Okay, so that's the end of the financial assumptions. Okay, so these are just examples. You could also look for other example of financial assumptions online. Okay, so kung ito hindi pa sapat, pwede pa kayong magdagdag. So let's now move on our computational part of the lecture. Okay, let's now move on to the next part of our discussion, which is setting up the actual financial projection. As you can see, I am using a template right here. I've personally selected this template because it's very comprehensive, and aside from that, it's very easy to use. Siguro sampulan ko lang ng mabilis. Like for example, here in your real estate land, if you're planning at napag-usapan ng grupo nyo na instead of renting, why not bili na lang kayo ng personal na lupa? Okay? So let's just say the worth of the land is around 1,500,000. Okay? That's just for the land. Wala pang building yan. Wala pang anything. The good thing about this template is that it automatically transfer the data that is needed sa ibang financial reports. Like for example, nag-input ka ng 1,500,000 dito, it's gonna automatically reflect on your balance sheet under fixed assets. Okay? And then you just simply have to input the other information that is not yet included here. But it's for sure na kung ano man yung mga i-input nyo dun sa inyong operating expenses, dun sa inyong cash, dun sa inyong equity, no, automatic na siyang mag-reflect dito. But for your information, hindi naman required na ito yung gamitin ninyo. It's just going to be a guide for you guys. You could always look for other resources if you would like to, if you would love to research more, walang problema sa akin. Actually, if given the normal circumstances, you could always go to the library and search for the submitted feasibility study, which was created by previous fourth year students, ano? So for now, you could this is a reasonable template that you can use for you to finish your paper's financial aspect. Okay. So, uh, after that introduction, let me just show you guys that this Excel sheet, again, it's very comprehensive. No, it's linked from the other sheets to the entire sheet. So interconnected yung buong sheets ng Excel file na ito. That's which makes it so easy to use. So ang gagawin niyo na lang i-identify, i-research yung mga cost, okay? Even yung depreciation is already here. You just have to input the number of years based on your research. So, for example, yung sasakyan na bibili nyo, if it's a delivery van, it's going to be a truck, you have to research also ilang years yung kanyang useful life or most efficient years na gagamitin. Okay? Aside from that, we have improvements, okay? We have furniture and fixtures. Siyempre, yung furniture and fixtures natin, na hindi yan same ng life or depreciation or useful life, I should say. It's not the same useful life with your other accounts here in your fixed assets. So please be mindful of the years that you would be putting here. Okay? And then, of course, your operating capital. You need operating capital simply because you cannot start the business without cash. Kasi all of these are deposits. Realistically speaking, uh, when you put up a business, actually mas magastos pa nga yung mga deposits kasi sa kuryente na lang, you have to deposit, you have to research how much yung deposit pagdating sa tubig, sa ilaw, sa internet, even sa marketing. Ito, lilitaw dito sa operating capital yung expenses nyo dun sa initial marketing programs ninyo. So, you really have to reconcile your management, your marketing, and technical aspect dito sa inyong financial aspect. Okay? Yeah, it's gonna merge. Lahat would merge here sa inyong financial aspect. Okay? And then of course, you need your cash on hand. Okay? So kailangan talaga merong actual cash on hand so that you could anticipate the short-term liabilities intended for the next months of the business. Remember, yung projection natin is 3 years. So, on the first year of operation, kailangan meron kang cash on hand. Okay? After going into your initial startup funding, if there are other elements that this template uh, has missed, you could always insert yung mga hindi na isama dito. You could always do additional research for that matter. So after computing for the total operating capital, i-add na automatically ng Excel yung fixed assets and then yung total operating capital, and that would be your total initial startup cost. Okay? Please be mindful, dito kasi you have to decide whether you're going to purchase a land or you're just going to simply um, rent. Okay? So kung wala kayong lupa at hindi rin naman kayo magpapatayo ng building, you're just simply going to rent. So mawawala ito. Okay? Mawawala 'yan. At dito lang tayo sa rent deposit magkakaroon. Okay? Malinaw ba 'yon? But definitely, of course, you're going to have improvements. Okay? Uh, so, yung improvements na yon, yun lang ang maisasama natin dito. Okay, after that, you have to figure out your sources of funding. Again, I think I've mentioned a while ago, since you can't go out and interview banks when it comes to their interest rates. But if you would want to, uh, kung ano lang, kung ayaw nyo dun sa initial funding ninyo na meron na kaagad commercial loan, although again, realistically speaking, if you're planning to put up a business, usually you would really avail for a short-term commercial loan or a long-term commercial loan, which usually to ano yan, maximum a minimum of 3 years to 5 years, maximum of 1 million or 2 million for some banks, depende sa uh, credit investigation nila sa iyo and dun sa value ng collateral na pwede mong ibigay. So usually pagka mas mataas yung value ng collateral, mas malaki yung loan na pwedeng ibigay sa iyo. So I'm not really restricting you guys, but dini-discourage ko lang kayong lumabas at the moment. So right here we have sample of loan rates, okay? So if maisipan ninyo kung ang tawag dito, if hindi siya exclusive for your group mates, dito kayo sa owner's equity, and if you would want to insert outside investors, walang problema, and then magdagdag pa kayo ng commercial loan, as long as meron kayong basis for the loan rate, again, walang problema. But you have to also ask kung ilang percent yung commercial loan for a given period of time. Usually kapag mas mahaba yung term, mas mataas yung interest rate. So, I think dito kailangan nyo talagang pag-isipan itong sa required startup funds or initial starting capital. And then for the salaries and wages, okay, again, let me just remind you, if you are projecting increase in your sales or revenue, you also have to make sure reasonable yung number of employees na nagtatrabaho sa firm ninyo. So make sure you are also expanding your number of employees as the year progresses. Okay? So please be reasonable on your projections. Next is your operating expenses. Dito sa operating expenses, meron tayong variable tsaka fixed, 'di ba? Kapag fixed operating expenses, ito yung regardless of the sales that you make. This is regardless of the revenue that you render. Ito talaga every month binabayaran. Okay? So, kung makikita nyo merong percent change dito, nandito, yan yung kasama sa financial assumptions ninyo na every year tinatansya nyo na magkakaroon talaga ng increase sa inyong expenses. So, this is fixed operating expenses. Alright? Makikita nyo may mga samples naman tayo dito ng list ng mga fixed operating expenses. Again, if merong hindi included dito, you could always add. Okay? This is just a breakdown, ano? Breakdown lang naman to ng operating expense. Pwedeng i-include na lang to as note. Kasi ang pinaka-importante naman dun sa income statement, merong basis yung expenses. So, this is going to serve as a note lang. Okay? So, meron pa tayong other expenses dito, like depreciation, interest from the loans kung meron kayong i-include. But definitely, depreciation, meron yan as long as meron kayong fixed asset. Right? Next, we go to the projected sales forecast. Okay. Dito sa projected sales forecast, as you can see, it's a monthly basis. Okay? Why? Because for some products or service, seasonal sila. That's why you have to make, again, ito, meron na namang assumptions dito. Okay? Makikita to dun sa financial assumptions ninyo kung ilan ang tinatansya nyo or ina-assume nyo na level of growth every year. But then going back to what I was saying, the reason kung bakit monthly, it's because some businesses are very much seasonal. Like if you are in the food business, usually kapag ka December, kung catering yan, tsaka January, kasi dyan yung pinakamaraming okasyon talaga, ay mga fiesta, o di kaya naman maraming get together. So, tinatansya mo na mas malaki yung projection mo for this month as compared to the other lean months. Okay? Meron talaga tayong normal months. Okay? You should do a projection for the normal months. And then you should do a projection for the lean season. For example, mga rainy season, ganyan. Yung tinatawag nilang gawat period. Talagang lean season. And pagdating ng mga burr months, dyan na pick up yung sales. And that's the reason why you have to make sure your sales projection is on a monthly basis. And then from there, nagkakaroon na lang ng increase. Okay, so every year, ilan ang ini-increase per month ng projection mo? Is it 5% or 10%? So as you can see, meron ka ng naka-ano siya dito, segregate siya per product or service. So, para hindi kayo mahirapan, probably, lalo na dun sa mga retailing, um, you could include a separate note. Okay? So, if gusto nyo siyang per product, walang problema. Okay? Yun nga lang, medyo matrabaho. Pero kung gagawin nyo siyang all in all, um, hindi naman ako magiging ganun ka stricto na since we are doing things in a very limited time. So it's up to you if you would want to do it per product or as a whole. Kasi mahihirapan yung mga nagre-retail na napakaraming products. Especially kung ano yan, for the likes of bakery, Kung, imagine mo kung per product mo gagawin yun, talaga. Oh my gosh, nagtatagal ka talaga, no? Ayan, ito yung seasonality factor na sinasabi ko. So, kung you can just simply edit this, no? Yung percent ng seasonality, if it's 20% seasonal, 30% seasonal, i-compute niya na automatic. And then, meron pa dito kung ilan yung growth mo per year, overhead expense allocation, ano pa ba? Nakasulat dito yung price per unit. Ito, magre-reflect kasi ito dun sa sales mo, dun sa income statement. That's why, if you're planning to use this template, you have to make sure ilagay nyo lahat ng given na hinahanap niya. Okay? Yung variable cost per unit, merong separate, may separate na computation dito. But if you would want to write it here agad-agad, for example, if the price per unit is 100, the variable cost is 60 pesos. Okay? So, isulat nyo lang dito. Okay? Next, pakita ko lang sa inyo kung anong pwede maging basis nyo ng sales forecast ninyo. No? I'm gonna show to you an example of a basis. Pwedeng maging basis ng inyong computation. Okay. Sige. Dun sa inyong marketing aspect, okay, if na-establish nyo yung target market nyo ng mahusay, usually I require my students to really get the census of the province. Okay? This is hindi siya updated na census, but nung ginawa namin ito, nag-base kami dun sa current census ng province of Tarlac. So if ang target consumer ninyo is just within Tarlac City, you have to look at I think may available naman sa internet, ano, para lang may basis kayo ng sales projection ninyo. Alright. Um, you really have to know kung kung saan yung magiging place of the business. Kung moving yung business, you have to make sure makover ninyo yung buong area at makuha ninyo yung population, yung demographics nung area na gusto nyong i-cover. Okay? So from there, you would look for an estimate. So in this case, it's a food business. We've indicated that our target market are employees, okay, students, very particular elementary students, very particular high school students, and then very particular or specific college students. So nag-derive kami ng population right here. And then nag-derive din kami ng pwedeng possibility, no, nakikita nyo 92% yung pwedeng ma-capture ng indirect competitors. So, ang matitira lang doon is yung 8%. This is the estimated target market. And then from there, mas naging conservative pa yung estimate namin that only 6% of the target market can really be captured. So from this number, lumiit ng lumiit. So 120, 71, 104, 88. So all in all, on a daily basis, we have an estimate of 383 potential consumers. Okay? So ito yung pwede nyo maging basis ng sales projection ninyo that in a day, you can capture at least, sige, round off mo na 400. Okay, 400 customers. So, ito na, yung pwede nyo maging basis ng daily sales ninyo and then you just simply convert that to a monthly projection. Okay, so I hope meron na kayong idea kung paano nyo siya gagawin. So, kailangan nyo talagang humanap ng census. So, itong target market na to, pwede nyo i-attach dun sa inyong marketing aspect. Okay? So after the sales projection, kung mapapansin niyo dito sa template, dalawa yung kanyang projected sales forecast kasi this one is more conservative. Kung mapapansin niyo ito, 25%. So mas naging conservative pa siya, not so much enthusiastic yung kanyang projection, ginawa niya na lang 10%. So bakit kailangan maging conservative sa estimates? Because you don't want to be overly confident with the estimates. Okay na rin yung meron kang kumbaga sabi mo ng highly progressive yung economy. Okay? Ibig sabihin this is good economy. This is not so much. Okay, mas okay na yung you're looking at the both sides of the picture. All right. For the next one, dito sa cash receipts disbursement, it's up to you if you would want to fill in this sheet kasi this one is really more on the cash yung pumapasok na cash at yung lumalabas na cash. So it's just the computation of cash in and cash out na collectibles. Okay? So this one is from your suppliers, this one is from your mga pautang. Okay? So it's up to you if you want to include this part right here. And for the income statement, okay, naka-indicate na dito is, ang pinaka-importante naman dito is pag na-compute mo na yung sales projection mo, automatic meron ka ng income. And then, this one is the cost of sales. Sa cost of sales kasi, as defined, this is the cost that the firm incurs for it to able to produce the product. Okay? So, dito na papasok yung raw materials ninyo. Usually, nagkakaroon lang ng estimation sa purchases. If you're going to look for other resources online, yung purchases is only ina-assume at a certain percent ng sales. So, kung ang sales mo, pwede nyo balikan yung budgeting, budgeting discussion natin sa FM1. No? Nag-a-assume na lang ng certain percent for the cost of sales or the overhead cost. But if you want to do this in detail, walang problema. Okay? Pag-uusapan pa dyan yung labor, direct labor, mga cost, um, costing ng ano pa ba? Yung indirect labor, direct labor, medyo matrabaho. So, if you just want to do an estimate, walang problema sa akin. If you want to do it in detail, again, walang problema sa akin. Okay. So, after that, automatic magkukompute na ng gross margin itong template natin. Okay, from your direct expenses, automatic siyang magre-reflect dito. So, kung ano man yung in-input nyo dun sa kabilang sheet, lalabas din siya dito. Okay, kung nakikita nyo, it is a per month basis. So, it's up to you guys. Ito pala kasi is a detailed. Kumbaga, this is a note. Meron pa kasing isang income statement dito na yearly basis. So, this one is a monthly basis. You can do this as, kumbaga pwede nyong gawin to yung initial projected income statement ninyo. And then from there, nag-i-increase na lang kayo per year. Basta importante yung year 1 or year 0, ma-fill in nyo lahat. Okay? So, ayan. Actually, ito, once na fill up mo na yung dun sa direct operating expenses, hindi ka na magkakaproblema dito sa income statement kasi automatic na siyang nagko-compute. From your income, i-deduct niya lang yung expenses and then that's it. Makukuha na yung net income. Okay? For the cash flow statement naman, if you can still recall kung ano ibig sabihin ng cash flow, it just simply shows kung paano pumasok yung cash and then paano lumabas yung cash. So these are example of the cash that goes out of the firm. So ito yung cash outflow. So yung cash flow niya, no, automatic na nagko-compute. Automatic niya nang i-compute yan. Okay? Meron ka ng ending cash balance. Again, this is going to be a monthly basis kasi ito yung magiging basis nga ng yearly projection. After mong gawin nito, automatic nang nag-i-increase by percent yung cash flow mo on a per year basis. Ito lang yung mahirap gawin, yung base year. After that, increase in percent na lang lahat. And then for the balance sheet, okay, ano lang to, eto kasi wala siya dun sa ano kanina, no? Sa bagay, lilitaw din kasi kung may mortgage. So, yung mga accounts na hindi na necessary, you could always delete them. Okay, kung ano lang yung meron, kung loan payable, accounts payable lang meron, walang problema. Okay? Dun sa owner's equity, kung owner's equity, wala namang common stock, wala ring retained earnings for the base year, wala ring dividends. So meron lang owner's equity, just let it be. Okay? Kung owner's equity lang, just let it be. Lilitaw din ito from yung unang yung dun sa first part ng sheet, magre-reflect din siya dito. Okay? So again, please be mindful din. Kung makikita nyo, no, ito yung base period and then there's end of year 1, automatic na siya nagko-compute. Syempre kapag ka balance sheet, alam mo na, talagang dapat balance yung total assets sa total liabilities and total owner's equity. Ano pa ba? Hmm. Okay. After that, actually, napaka-magical lang nitong template na to kasi nagko-compute na mag-isa yung financial ratios. But then again, if you do not want to use this template, pwede nyo lang siyang gawing guide. So, ang pinakakailangan lang natin dito sa ratio is this one. So, you can use this mm, template for you to compute the ratios na pinakakailangan lang naman, pinaka-substantial. So, obviously, wala tayong industry norms. Ang papakita lang natin is yung ratios from year 1, year 2, and year 3. Okay. For the break-even analysis, automatic na rin siya nagko-compute. As long as meron ka ng annual sales revenue, cost of sales, gross margin, fill-upan nyo lang to, automatic siyang magko-compute ng break-even in terms of sales and break-even in terms of amount. Okay, ganun siya ka. You can use this as your calculator para hindi na kayo mahirapang mag-compute. But if you want to do the long version, walang problema. Balikan nyo lang yung usually tinuturo ko kasi to sa sa strategic financial management tsaka sa economics. So if you would want to review your lecture on that subject, walang problema. Okay? Madali lang naman i-google ano ang formula ng break-even analysis or pwede rin kayo mag-YouTube if you want. But I'm presenting this template to you kasi automatic na siya nagko-compute. And then, the last portion would be the net present value. Yes, I want you to compute for the net present value because this is the only indicator that we would know that the business is really profitable. I'm not gonna discuss the theories of net present value because actually isang sem ko tinuturo yun. Pero gawin na lang natin siyang shortcut version, okay? So, paano ba kinukompute yung net present value? So, I have a sample here. Meron akong sample. This is the initial capital. So, kapag na-compute nyo na yung initial capital nyo, kailangan nyo lang kunin yung ending cash flow balance ng na-compute ninyo. So, we are going to assume that these are the cash flow balance o at the end of each year. Okay? So, ito po yung ending cash balance or sabihin na natin i-assume na natin hindi siya negative. Cash inflow siya na positive. Kaya nga inflow, no? Positive. Okay, so how do you do that? You simply input NPV. Okay? Kasi nagko-compute na mag-isa yung Excel. Hindi mo na kailangan magmano-mano. Okay? Net present value. So, kung ipapakita ko siguro yung formula ng net present value, I'm just gonna open na. Ay, naku, hindi pala naka-open yung aking PowerPoint. Anyway, ang formula lang niya is to simply get the summation, the present value of all of the cash flow from year 1 to year 3 kasi hanggang year 3 lang naman tayo. But for this example, it's 5 years. So, ang formula niya is you get the present value of all the future cash flows and then deduct, i-minus mo yung initial capital. Okay. So, dito sa Excel, madali lang. Ida-drag mo lang yung projected cash flow. Ay, meron pa palang rate. Okay. For the rate, ito kasi ang ibig sabihin kasi nito yung yung riskiness nung investment. So, usually yung rate corresponds to the, ano ba? It is usually connected with the pautang, okay? Dun sa rate ng investors and rate ng loans. Okay? Kasi ito yung ito yung risk associated with the business. Okay, kung susumahin. So, yung rate is just being assumed. Sa mga small businesses, usually ang rate na ginagawa is usually nasa 9 to 12%. Okay? So, kung ang rate na gagamitin natin, i-assume natin is around 9%. Okay? So, syempre, the higher the rate, the lower the return, 'di ba? So, this is going to be assumed given the level of risk that is dictated in the industry that you're in. So, pwede nyong i-research kung ano yung usually rate of return ng, for example, barbershop, ng isang bakery. So, you can do that research. Or you could just simply assume. Okay? So, insert na lang natin, i-highlight lang natin yung cell, and then close parenthesis. Since naka-minus tong initial project natin, gawin ko lang plus para hindi siya mag-add. Okay? So, lilitaw dito, 45,402.82. Ibig sabihin, sa buong span ng project, ang tinatansya na pwedeng maging return from this project is 45,402.82. But this one is in dollars. Okay? So, ang rule kasi sa net present value, as long as positive yung net present value mo, the project would be accepted, or it means the project would be profitable. So, if the business partners, the investors are kumbaga convinced sila that this value is enough for them as a return at the end of the project, then the project would be accepted. Okay? So, again, ang formula ng net present value is this one. Okay, so 9% din yung sinabi ko, 9% yung sinabi ko kanina, no? So, lagyan nyo ng comma and then drag the cells and then i-subtract yung initial capital. The reason bakit ko siya ginawang plus kasi negative na siya doon, ano? Kasi minus baka magpa-plus siya. Okay, so parehas na positive. Ano? Anong pwedeng mag-cause para bumaba yung net present value mo? Siyempre, the higher the net present value, the better. So, pag iniba mo yung rate mo, for sure mag-iiba yan, bababa. Kasi nga, yung riskiness ng project, habang tumataas yung risk, yung net present value ng investment mo would also decrease. Okay? Now that you know the concept of net present value, we go now to your, ano ba to? Ano yung last na sinabi ko kasi, no? Payback period. So, ilang years bago mo makuha or maibalik yung investment mo. Okay? So, I'm gonna teach you how to compute for the payback period. So, based on this example, okay, pag nakuha na ninyo yung cash flow ninyo, na compute na yung cash flow, we're gonna base our payback period dito sa cash flow at hindi sa net income. There are certain feasibility studies na nakikita ko, nagbe-base sila ng payback period nila on their income. No, that's incorrect. So, kailangan mag-base ka ng payback period on your cash flow. Alright? So, for year 1, alright, year 1, you have 20, 30, 40, 50. So, copyhin ko lang, copyhin ko lang siya dito. Alright. So, from here, equal sign, 110,000 minus 20,000. Ibig sabihin, sorry, plus pala dapat. Naka-negative nga pala. Kasi positive, positive cash flow. So, it's an inflow. So, ito, nababawasan yung initial costing mo or yung initial funding mo. You just want to know ilang years bago mo mabawi yung ininvest mo. So, from your cash flow, nagbabawas ka lang. Binabawasan mo lang siya. Okay, 90,000 na lang natira, minus 30. Okay, equals 60 plus this one. Ngayon, since hanggang year 3 lang yung projection natin, you could always increase, magbe-base kasi kayo dun sa projection nyo rin ng automatic din naman kasing nagko-compute yung cash flow. You could extend the cash flow until year 5 kasi baka hindi kayanin ng hanggang year 3 yung payback. So, pwede nyo namang i-extend yung projection nyo ng cash flow. Okay? So, from here, 20 plus 50. So, alam mo na, by this time, magpa-positive na siya. Ibig sabihin, nabawi na. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, at year 4, dun nag-positive. So, alam mo na, it will take 4 years bago mabawi yung initial capital ng project. But to be more specific, okay, para makita mo kung gusto mo mas specific yung answer mo, ilang months, you just simply divide yung 20,000 dito sa 50,000. Okay. So the answer is 0.4. Ibig sabihin, the most exact answer would be 4.4 years. So 4 years and 4 months. Okay? So ganun lang kadali yung payback period. Hindi ko na, actually meron pang isang paraan para mag-compute ng payback period, yung tinatawag na discounted payback period using the rate, no? Yung rate na ginamit natin dito. You have to incorporate that to your cash flows, but since we don't want to make everything more complicated for you guys, okay na sa akin tong simpleng payback period. Okay? So, I know it's going to entail a lot of time for you guys to finish this. So, I hope magawa ninyo ng paraan umabot sa deadline. You have to start immediately para ma-edit pa natin eventually yung gawa ninyo. And you could always ask questions, no? Feel free to ask questions if you don't understand something dun sa ginagawa ninyo. Wag mag-alinlangang magtanong. Okay, so far yun na kailangan nating gawin. Again, if you need more research on this components, you may always do so. But ang importante, makompute yung initial capital, sources of financing, maipakita ninyo, salaries and wages. Ito, very important din yung operating expense nyo. Pinakamahirap gawin, sales projection, I guess. Yes, kasi after nito, lahat madali, everything else will follow. Then projected income statement, cash flow, balance sheet, the ratios, break-even analysis, net present value, and payback period. And so that ends our discussion or a very short lecture for the component of the financial aspect. If meron din kayong, ako I suggest if you know someone who is very much knowledgeable na kaibigan na pwede kayong magpatulong sa akin, walang problema. But if you really want to do it on your own, I would be more proud of you kung magagawa nyo talaga siya on your own. Okay? Consultation hours is 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just message me. Wag mahihiya. So, thank you for finishing the video. Maraming salamat and I wish you well. Good luck on finishing your paper.